Hey guys, it's Kip from Famous by Friday Pickleball. I have 10 of the most interesting paddles of 2024. I'm going to kind of bounce through the attributes of these paddles and what makes them kind of fascinating, a little interesting, and I love what companies have tried with these paddles. Some things worked, some things kind of missed the mark a little bit, but this game's kind of still in its infancy, and I love that companies are trying new things to see what's going to work. All right, let me just show these on the screen. I'll kind of bounce through them and give you my thoughts on these paddles as I go. All right. All right, guys, this is the Ctek Alpha paddle. I like this paddle a lot. What made this paddle so much different is all of the polypropylene honeycomb cells are filled with foam. So all of these cells are filled with foam. You can see the foam also around the edges here. That's pretty standard for Gen 2 thermoforming. But all of these cells are filled with foam. Yes, it made it heavier, made it a little head heavy out here, but it also made this just one giant sweet spot. So very cool outside the box thinking from Ctek. They did a great job with this paddle. I like it a lot, and it's just a lot of fun to hit. Love the outside the box thinking here. All right. All right, guys, this is the core of the YOLO Ben Johns Hyperion 3S. This is a 16 millimeter version, but the 14 millimeter version is exactly the same. You can see that it is Gen 2 thermoformed with the foam layer around the outside, the injected foam layer that goes all the way down into the handle. This is the polypropylene core with 8 millimeter cells, very standard. What made this paddle different is this inner layer of flexible foam, the propulsion core, that allows the core to kind of give a little trampoline effect and give it more power. So this area of foam allows the core to move slightly within the structure to deliver more power. That's very outside the box thinking, and YOLO was really the first to really try this out. The first version of this did not work very well, but the 3S has done really well, and it's a very cool idea, and it's done great. All right, guys, now we're going to get into what maybe didn't work so well from YOLO. This is the YOLO TA15. This is a 15 millimeter core. You can see that it is Gen 2 thermoform. This is the foam that goes around the edges. This is the propulsion core, this inner layer of softer foam that allows the core to move. Now, from what I understand that YOLO did, this is a 16 millimeter core, polycore, with 8 millimeter cells. You can see here as we scroll through the damage that has been done to this core. And you can see that it's on different levels. I'll kind of show you a different view here in a minute. You can see that all this damage has been done. You can see it all the way through the core, but it's very inconsistent of what part of the core this has been done to. So what we understand is that they took a 16 millimeter core and core crushed it to 15 millimeter. Now this paddle in the last week has been delisted, and it probably should have been right away. As you can see that it is core crushed just to begin with, right out of the factory. Took the 16 millimeter and they crushed it down to 15. Let me show you a different view of this, and I'll kind of show you what it looks like. All right, so this is a different view of this. This is just like it would be lying flat on the court. You can see where it's been crushed. It's like a loaf of bread. When you crush it, it doesn't necessarily crush in the middle or crush consistently at any part. You can see that it does it at different levels and different places. Yes, this adds power to the paddle because we all know what core crushing does. It adds more power to it because the outside layer flexes in more and is allowed to flex in more. Why this paddle was a little inconsistent is you're going to have different kind of areas of where this damage, if you will, this purposeful damage is done. So if a ball hits here, it might not have the same reaction as if it hits over here. It's just going to be a little bit different. That's why when paddles core crush or delam, they're a little tough to control, and that was kind of the drawback to the TA15 anyway, is they were just a little tough to control. You can see the Gen 2 thermoforming and then the propulsion core layer out here. It is fascinating what they tried here. It is outside the box thinking, and it made one of the most interesting paddles of 2024. All right, guys, this is the Diadem Hush, a paddle that's specifically made for those noise-restricted areas, and that will still allow us to get out and play the game we love. You can see that there's some foam around the edges here. Pretty standard, 8mm honeycomb core, although they do say this is a carbon fiber core. But you can see that it's pretty standard from this view. What makes this paddle special is this eTPU face. It's a quiet surface. It absorbs all that sound. Now, when you hit the ball hard, you're still going to hear this core because this face just can't block all that sound. But for the most part, it really blocks the sound and gives this paddle just tremendous spin and really nice performance. This is the cool part of this paddle, though, is this face right here, the eTPU face. Once again, outside the box thinking, very cool and an interesting paddle. All right, guys, let's get weird here with the next paddle, the new Rhombus Ripple. This paddle has been released in kind of its beta form. It hasn't really been released yet. There's been multiple release dates, but it really hasn't been released yet, but it still qualifies for one of the most interesting paddles of 2024, if not one of the most interesting paddles ever. You can see here that this is foam around here. There it is, Gen 2 thermoformed, but this foam here, there's no honeycomb core, there's no polypropylene core, it's only foam. These are openings in the foam that kind of give it that ripple effect and give this paddle plenty of power and kind of keeps up with the other power paddles that are out there right now. Very different, very unusual, and very interesting for 2024. Totally fascinating. The Rhombus Ripple. All right, guys. If we're on weird, let's stay weird. This is the Gearbox Ultimate Core. This area here is the smart dampen technology that runs the entire perimeter of the surface. This is the SST core, or the carbon core that has been used in Gearbox for years. This is another layer of foam that surrounds this. Okay, so what this does is allow this core to trampoline. It's a lot like the technology of the YOLO paddles with the propulsion core. This essentially does the same thing. This flexes and allows the ball to trampoline and be thrown off of there. But it's a completely different take on it, completely different technology, but it does the same. It trampolines that ball off of there and allows the face also to be separated from here a little bit. I'll try and show you that in a different view. Okay, so this is definitely tough to see, but it allows this face to kind of trampoline back and forth in these areas. As you can see, this is the carbon here, the SST core. This is the dampening technology, or all the area out here that allows this face to move, or this core to move within that structure. Fascinating, fascinating stuff here from Gearbox. A totally different, way outside the box thinking as far as cores and what this allows this paddle to do and be. Very cool, very interesting, very different, and definitely a 2024 difference maker. All right, something different here as well. This is the Kiwi Lab Circuit. They did something a little bit different here. Once again, you can see that this is Gen 2 thermoformed, 8mm cells on the poly core, but the part you can't see here, because once again, foam within the core is the same. I mean, you can see that foam here, this is foam along the edges. It's the same density as air, so you're not going to see the subtle difference or the attempt at difference from Kiwi paddles, and here's what it really looks like here. But this area is all foam that goes around here to give this paddle a larger sweet spot and a better feel. All this should be sweet spot because this foam drags out the twist weight. It's a lot like putting weights on the edge of your paddle and should give this more power and performance. You can't really see it on this view because, once again, it's the same density as air. But once again, outside the box thinking, completely different and something new from Kiwi Labs. Very cool. All right, guys, another interesting paddle of 2024 is the Proton Series A. And why this paddle is so different, structurally it's the same as most other paddles with the poly honeycomb core. That it comes in 11 millimeters or 15 millimeters. All that is very similar. All that is very normal. But what makes this paddle different and one of the most interesting paddles of 2024 is the Nanotech surface. If you haven't played with one of these paddles or seen one of these paddles, when it comes in the packaging, initial packaging, it is the surface is almost slick. And you kind of think it's not going to spin at all, it's not going to do anything, but once you play with it a while, this surface gets tackier and almost it's sticky in a way, and it really grabs the ball, really spins it. It's a fascinating outside the box thinking from Proton. The Series A, the Nanotech surface, very cool, and definitely one of the most interesting paddles of 2024. Very cool. All right, guys, another interesting paddle is the Selkirk Lab 007. The Selkirk Labs paddles over the years have been a little hit and miss, but I love that they try new things, and they've tried a new thing, and that really is what qualifies it for an interesting paddle of 2024. The fascinating thing about this is this titanium mesh layer that is over the core and underneath the carbon fiber surface. It really gives this paddle a lot of structure. My favorite 007, and you can watch the review, is the 10 millimeter version, and this titanium mesh layer gives it so much structure and so much performance that you can get by with that thin of a paddle and you really don't notice that it's that thin. It just adds so much playability to it. Once again, kind of outside the box thinking, it really qualifies. I kind of wonder if we're going to see this more from other companies, different layers and different processes to add more structure to paddles. Very cool. Project 007. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the weirdest paddle of 2024, the ALPXE. If you picked one of these up, you know right away that it is really, really, really different. Once again, it goes back to trying to make a paddle for the noise-restricted areas, and the AL is perfect for that. It is very, very soft. You don't really hear the ball come off of here at all. It has to do with this acoustine cover. It's almost like a felt cover, if you will, but it's very playable. You can play with it even if you're not in a noise restricted area. You can play with this paddle. It has a ton of spin. The ball really stays on there and has great dwell time. Once again, there's a full review on my site on this paddle, but it is way outside the box thinking. It is a very cool paddle. And I love that people are trying different, companies are trying different things to make sure that we all get to play no matter what area we live in. And the ALPXE definitely covers those noise restricted areas. You can definitely play. And this paddle, it can still perform. It's got really cool properties. All right, great paddle of 2024. All right, guys, those are 10 of the most interesting paddles for 2024. I liked all of those paddles. They all did different things, and I just love the outside-the-box thinking. And I'm very excited for 2025 to see what paddle companies are going to try next. This sport of pickleball is still kind of in its infancy, and I like that the companies are trying different things to not only increase the popularity of the game, but build the brand and, build up their companies as well by trying different products. These were very interesting. Some worked, some didn't, but they were all cool. And I kind of liked all these paddles. Even the ones like the Hush or the Owl that were made for specific areas, still, those paddles can play, and you can play even if you're not in a noise-restricted area. They still got game, and they can still play. I love what companies are trying. Excited for 2025. Now, I'm going to throw a rant in here a little bit, hopefully a short rant. But I'm going to plead to the USAPA, get your act together. In the last week, you delisted 7 paddles that you had listed already as being approved. I don't believe that this really helps the game. It definitely doesn't help the manufacturers of these paddles or the consumers, us, the players that buy these paddles. Now we've either got to figure out what to do with these paddles that were previously listed. Do we send these paddles back? What do they do? I know Gearbox and I know YOLO has already come up with a plan. Still, that causes a lot of distrust and a lot of issues within the pickleball community. My plea is get your act together. Either don't list them to begin with or leave them listed. It didn't take months to figure out that a couple of those paddles were chaos. And you had to hit them one time to know, wow, that ball really shoots off of there. I'll use the Gearbox power. I'm not going to throw them under the bus, but I'm going to just throw the Gearbox power. You had to change your entire swing to make that paddle work. Not a bad paddle, but you had to change everything because the ball just trampolined off of there so fast. It's not the only one. But you knew that right away. It didn't take 6 months to figure that out. You knew that from moment one. So now you've got a company that's manufactured these paddles. They build a whole area around these paddles. And you've got consumers that are playing with these paddles. It just gives a lack of trust and makes the community look a little... It's a bad look. My plea is either list them or don't ever list them to begin with. Just be better. Like us all of us, we try and be better. Be better. That's my big plea. All right, guys. Hoping for a great 2025. I know we're going to have fun. It's a sport we love. We're going to get out and play. Please hit like. Please hit subscribe. Please leave a comment on maybe there's a paddle I missed or you thought was a super cool paddle of 2024 that should have been included and that you really thought was outside the box thinking as well. Very cool. I love these paddles. Get out and play, guys. 2025 is almost here. Happy New Year.